Re-Zero, Arc 8, Chapter 2, Grudges.
Beatrice was at a loss as to how to handle the little girl known as Louis. When the magic crystal cannon fired from the Crystal Palace, their relationship allowed them to cooperate in sending it to another space. Without Louis' mysterious teleportation ability, it would not have been possible to reach that place. Had they not arrived, many deaths would have occurred on the battlefield, starting with Seekers. This single act alone could not have dispelled the responsibility of Louis being the Sin Archbishop of Gluttony. And yet, Louis, Beatrice, Betty can trust that you have no animosity towards Subaru and the others, I suppose. Sitting awkwardly on the shaking saddle, although only the size of children, 3 people aside from the primary rider rode the running red Galewind horse. On the back of the Galewind horse, Beatrice and Louis sat with Subaru between them. Unlike Beatrice, who was held in Subaru's arms, Louis dexterously stood up on the horse behind him, tapping Subaru's shoulder and pointing in one direction. From Beatrice's point of view, the situation in the imperial city of Lupagana was a crucible of chaos, beginning with the clash between the regular army and the rebels, uncommanded flying dragons, and flying dragons that fought for each other for the sky. The white world and the red world transgressed the normal one, giants and dragons ran amok, and finally, the dead rose one after another, to ravage the city from the inside out. Being inclined to isolate herself, not giving support to anyone, there were few occasions in which Beatrice had directly intervened, but this world's insane and inconsistent way of being reminded her of the chaotic times of 400 years ago. Beatrice, witches. Thinking back to those bygone days, Beatrice naturally uttered that word. If there could have been one thing that symbolized that era of 400 years ago, it was unmistakably the witches. Echidna, Beatrice's creator, and the one whom she adored as her mother, was also one of those who were labeled witches. Other than that era in which there were several witches bearing the deadly sins, that era when everyone was struggling to survive, was a dark period that was like a child's nightmare come true. The current situation in the imperial capital was a return of the same thing. She wondered what could have triggered it, and her heart skipped a beat. While Beatrice held those frustrations in her heart, Subaru, hang in there, Rem. Immediately behind her, she heard Subaru's panting, yet determined, voice. Louis, voice sounding like a growl, and Subaru, hurrying the galloping horse in the direction she pointed, had no doubt that there was the waiting girl he was searching for. As Beatrice thought of the results of the time Subaru had spent with Louis, separated from her, her chest became a hazy mess, but she understood that there was trust between them. Beatrice, too, had no doubt that Rem was there, in the direction to which Louis was pointing. Looking back, Louis had spent a large amount of mana to extinguish the magic crystal cannon and went straight to Subaru to try to save the disappearing Beatrice. She had the power to locate those she was looking for. Whether that could be anyone, or only someone she knew was unclear. Subaru, a huge mansion. Idra, what do we do, Schwartz? The walls are high. Do we go around to the front? Subaru, no, that would be a waste of time. Tanza, the exchange took place as they crossed a number of streets ahead of them and approached their intended building. It was a mansion that took up an imposingly large plot of land in the northern part of the imperial capital, and its surroundings indicated that it was the residence of a person of high rank. Naturally, the walls surrounding the mansion were high to ensure adequate security, but, Tanza, I do not want to give you the wrong impression. Saying that, the dear girl, her voice as emotionless as her face, kicked the ground with the slightest hint of disapproval in her features and mutterings. Tanza, the young girl plunging straight into the wall in front of her, continued, Tanza, I am not Schwartz Summer's tool for breaking down walls. Right after her declaration, Tanza's thick-soled shoes struck the mansion's wall, which was likely imbued with the divine protection of earth attributes. This impact caused the wall, which should have enhanced the mansion's defenses, to cave in, be penetrated, and ultimately collapse. Accompanied by a booming sound and a gust of wind, the small silhouette of a girl emerged from beyond the wall. As if diving headfirst into the billowing smoke, the Galewind horse carrying Beatrice and the others leapt onto the property, and then, Louis, wow, Beatrice, Subaru, over there. In fact, within the spacious mansion grounds, multiple buildings separated from the main house were lined up, causing them to, momentarily, almost lose their sense of direction. However, looking around just like Subaru, Beatrice opened her round eyes and searched for their target, before noticing a gathering of people. At that same instant, Louis also looked in the same direction as Beatrice and shouted out, reinforcing her conviction. Ahead of them, at the entrance of a separate building, there were several figures. In front of the firmly shut door, all that could be seen was a back sporting the ragged equipment of an imperial soldier, and facing it were two figures, one of which Beatrice didn't recognize. The other was a girl whom Beatrice recognized as well. Subaru, L. Beatrice, Minya. A dull sword was raised, targeting the girl and her companion. As soon as they noticed it, Beatrice and Subaru, holding hands, raised their opposite hands and chanted magic. The ensuing deep purple arrow captured the back of the pale-faced men, transforming them into crystals. Enemies, Gar. A bitter cry leaked out, but no further action by the men was allowed. Accompanied by a high-pitched sound, similar to ice cracking, the men's figure shattered and crumbled away. The Galewind horse reached the girl, who, narrowly escaping death, widened her eyes in surprise as Beatrice and Subaru landed on the ground together, her hand pulled by his. And there, Subaru, kept you waiting, Rem. The real star has stepped on the stage. With one eye closed and teeth gleaming, Subaru made a pompous declaration. Despite his childish appearance, Beatrice looked at her partner from within his arms, proud of his unchanging bravery and scrambling to help someone else. The eyes of the girl whose life was saved widened as she met the gazes of Beatrice and Subaru. As it were, the excitement and emotion quivered within her throat. Rem, who are you? She asked, in a dubious voice, with an atmosphere that was not very friendly. Subaru, no, it's me. I'm a bit smaller, I'm telling you, it's me. You can tell, right, Rem? I'm grateful for the help, but you ring no bells at all. Subaru, no way. Subaru waved his arms and sorrowed at that unexpected cold response from Rem. He felt dejected by this reaction, especially since he thought that, after going through a hopeless experience, then having been saved from a life-threatening predicament, a deeply emotional meeting was surely awaiting him. Of course, since Subaru, being Subaru, went and got himself shrunk while Rem remained unaware, he thought that asking her to be openly happy would also be unreasonable. Subaru, in that sense, setting aside Louis, who already knew me in this state, it's quite something that Beatrice would just accept it right away. Beatrice, it's not really that Betty thought nothing of it, I suppose. It's merely that whether you have shrunk or not, it will not change that you're Betty's partner, in fact. More importantly, Subaru, more importantly, lowered to the ground from the arms in which she had been held, Beatrice looked at Subaru and Rem, comparing them. Then, narrowing her peculiarly patterned eyes, Beatrice, that attitude is completely different from what Betty had heard from Subaru, I suppose. That girl. Rem was supposed to have been gentle towards Subaru, in fact. Was that a lie, I suppose? Subaru, no, that wasn't a lie. It's just that she's forgotten a lot right now. Beatrice, forgotten. Derived from Rem's cold treatment, Beatrice was made unnecessarily suspicious. Likely, it was the doubt about whether Subaru had led everyone who did not remember Rem in her sleeping beauty state to believe a story that differed from reality. It was an unthinkable misunderstanding. In the first place, something like lying about Rem's personality as she slept was beyond blasphemous, and it too also made Subaru miserable. In response to Subaru's explanation, Beatrice silently turned back to Rem. Beatrice, you don't remember Betty, in fact. Rem, no, I believe this is our first meeting. Beatrice. I see, I suppose. I understand now, in fact. Rem, it seems that's persuaded you, but in the end, who are you guys? I appreciate the help, but Beatrice's face showed that from Rem's reply, she accepted that Subaru had not just said whatever he wanted. On the other hand, Rem's doubts remained undispelled. Even if Subaru and Beatrice were unilaterally convinced, Rem's questions would only continue to pile up. Although his own internal sense of discomfort had relatively decreased, sure enough, Rem's attitude clearly conveyed that the large Subaru and the small Subaru were completely different. Subaru, be that as it may, I'm me. Rem, in any case, let's tar, ? Oh my? I was wondering who helped us, but it's husband-kun. It's husband-kun, right. Thanks for rushing in, Subaru. Look, Flop-san understands. Eh? Flop-san? Saying that as Subaru was trying to somehow unravel Rem's incomprehension, he was taken aback at the sight of Flop, the blonde-haired young man that suddenly appeared from behind her. Having come to help Rem, he had not even considered that Flop would be with her. Subaru, why are you here? Were you kidnapped along with Rem? Flop, my oh my, it's quite daring to come to wife-san's aid without knowing anything, isn't it? But, on the whole, that understanding is not mistaken. More specifically, it would be correct to say that since I suffered a fatal wound, wife-san accompanied me to give me treatment. Subaru, a fatal wound. You're right. That's a terrible injury. Flop was as cheerful as ever, but, ignoring that ridiculously bright personality, the skin visible through the gaps in his clothes was wrapped in bandages, and his complexion seemed somewhat pale. Judging with his experience from the Gladiator Island, Flop was seriously wounded to the level where standing would have been greatly difficult. It seemed like saying that he had received a fatal wound had not been an exaggeration. Subaru, but, then Rem also. Geez, you're too gutsy. Rem, please wait. You're trying to move the conversation along smoothly, but... Flop-san, by calling this boy that, Flop, perhaps this kind of thing is all the more easier for a third party to notice? Like wife-san is thinking, it's husband-kun. With just a bit more baby face, Rem. At Flop's words, Rem stared down towards Subaru once again. Faced with the doubt emerging within her pale blue eyes, Subaru adjusted the angle of his face to give her a better view, and flashed his teeth. The hue of doubt turned to dismay, which then quickly turned to surprise. Rem, I thought you were a very strange person, but... Not only can you dress up as a woman, but you can even turn into a child. Subaru, that's wrong. This situation is out of my control. Isn't that right, Beatrice? Beatrice, Subaru, were you cross-dressing again in a place unknown to Betty and the others, I suppose? Subaru, don't get caught up on that right now. Both Rem and Beatrice looked at Subaru with doubt, overwhelming him. Flop, standing by the exchange, while holding up a finger to his own well-groomed face. Flop, well, it wasn't only husband Kun who dressed up as a woman, myself and village chief Kun also did it after all. We really looked like girls all together, and our figures were lovely too. Subaru, that's because I put all my points into my charisma stat at that time. Anyways, I'm glad we were able to meet up. Patting his chest in relief, Subaru smiled at both Rem and Flop. Flop nodded frankly at the smile, and Rem, after contemplating every last possibility, Rem, you went through all this trouble, to search for me? Subaru, well, of course. No, I didn't know you had been kidnapped until I was en route, but the moment I found out, my selfish feelings surged up. The only thing that made me certain you were here was, Louis, you, and just then, while he answered Rem's question, the reason for his certainty burst in. Wedging herself in between Subaru and Rem, it was Louis who had jumped toward the latter. Louis's golden hair fluttered as she embraced Rem, and even though she was surprised and gave a wow, Rem accepted the young girl's hug. With that face so close to her, relief emerged in Rem's eyes. Rem, Louis-chan, I see you're safe. I was worried that you might have been mistreated by him, since you went off on your own following that man. Louis, Subaru, no matter how you look at it, would I really treat her so poorly that you would be worried? Did I do that? I did, didn't I? I probably did do that. I regret that now, though. Stroking Louis's head as she hugged her, Rem made such a comment to which Subaru pouted his lips. In fact, if Rem and Louis separated at the time when Subaru and the others had set out to Chaos Flame, then that was the point in time at which Subaru and Louis's relationship had been the worst. It was not limited to the worry that along the way, Subaru may have taken the opportunity to abandon Louis in the fields. It could be said that Rem's worries were never-ending. But then again, Subaru, right now, I'm not thinking about doing anything to Louis. We've made peace, Rem, is that true? Louis-chan? Louis, you, With a broad smile on her face, Louis nodded her head, and the question mark above Rem's head was finally dispelled by her response. Since his body had shrunk, the circumstances which had probably been his biggest predicament was proceeding peacefully, so Subaru breathed a sigh of relief. Then, while gripping onto Subaru's hand, Beatrice, even though Betty intended on accepting it, it's still a scene that gives a very bad feeling, in fact. Such a thing like that girl and Rem being so friendly towards each other, it's a strange feeling, I suppose. Even though Beatrice muttered this, Subaru made a wry smile within his heart. However, considering that when he was first sent off of the Wallachian Empire, he was viewed with hostility by the newly awakened Rem, and was together in a situation with Louis, whose aims were completely unknown to him, Subaru was also in complete agreement with Beatrice. After all, through some causality, a Sin Archbishop of Gluttony, the cause of Rem turning into the Sleeping Beauty, was now spending time with her in the same place in such a friendly manner. Subaru. I still haven't found the proper answer for that yet, but Rem's memory had still yet to return. Louis's origin, too, still remained unknown. However, they were able to stay alive and reunite with Rem in this way, and Louis had also demonstrated as much of a friendly attitude towards them as she could. Thus, they should be able to find a solution. Therefore, Tanzer, Schwartz Summer, I do not think we have much time to be so relaxed. Witnessing the atmosphere of that reunion, the young girl interrupted with good timing and a good reason. Upon hearing the intervention of Tanzer, the little girl in a kimono, who had read the atmosphere, Subaru turned to her and said, "Yep." Then, keeping up a vigilant watch out on the surroundings from horseback, Idra also entered his field of view, and, "Idra, we found the person you're looking for. By the way, there isn't anyone else who has been taken, right, Beatrice? As far as Betty has heard, there shouldn't be anyone else. In fact, Rem, I also haven't noticed anyone else. Has Flop-san, Flop, I don't know of any other acquaintances who were brought in, either. Unless, carelessly, Medium has been kidnapped or something. How's she, husband Kun?" Subaru, she hadn't been kidnapped at the U-time/U we were separated, she'd shrunk, though. Flop, huh? What's that? What did you say? To Flop, who was concerned about his sister's safety, Subaru withheld the fact that Medium had also shrunk. Other than a shrunken appearance, she was in perfect health. Surely Medium would have left Chaos Flames safely and joined the group at Garrel. There was not time to reconcile the details of the situation and to wrangle over this and that there. In order to guarantee such a lively and cheerful time, they needed to move. Subaru, so, including Rem and Flop-san, I want to escape with as many people as possible, but is there anyone else in this estate? Rem, there is a woman named Katya-san whom I met here. Then, there's this detached building. Subaru, here? With a nod, Rem's gaze turned to the tightly closed door beside her. He had to defeat the enemy quickly, so he did not check it properly, but it seemed that Rem and Flop were trying to open this building. Flop, it's said that inside are black-haired crown princes from various places. Idra, black-haired crown princes. Schwartz's fakes. Flop answered Subaru's inner questions, and Idra frowned upon its content. The perception Idra expressed, that they were fake Schwartz, was generally shared by everyone in the Pleiades battalion, and it was one of the big lies Subaru was telling them. The black-haired crown prince, who was talked about across the empire, was the illegitimate son of Emperor Vincent Wallachia, and all of those who had taken the name for themselves in various regions were nothing but fakes. The real black-haired crown prince was none other than Natsuki Schwartz. Flop, the ones who were used as justification here and there to start a rebellion? To be blunt, I don't like this careless approach to things. Beatrice, Betty agrees with Beardy, I suppose. The originator doesn't like it either. In fact, Flop, the Beardy, Idra clearly expressed his displeasure at the imposter crown princes who seemed to be held captive inside the detached building, to which Beatrice nodded in agreement. To be blunt, Idra's words were painful for Subaru to hear as well. Beatrice's added comment seemed to support Subaru's guess as to whose scheme this was. Frankly, it was difficult to distinguish whether some of the fake crown princes were good guys or if some of them were bad guys. Tanzer, Schwartz Summer, what would you like to do? Subaru, nah, isn't there really nothing to discuss? If they're left here, sooner or later the zombies/you are definitely going to kill them, so we don't have a choice but to help. Tanza, with a hushed voice, Subaru replied to Tanza, who was asking for his decision. Tanza's eyes widened at the answer in regards to the black-haired crown princess. She was the only one who had been told ever since Gladiator Island that Subaru's claim to be the successor to the emperor was a lie spread for the purpose of creating a disturbance. A huge reason why the comrades of the Pleiades battalion trusted Subaru and were willing to participate in this battle for the imperial capital was because they believed that Subaru was the black-haired crown prince. If the captive false crown princes were released, the chances of that lie being exposed would increase. Subaru, but, that is that and this is this. Even though he was aware of Tanza's concerns, Subaru would not sacrifice human lives to protect a lie. Of course, one would hope that this act of compassion would be returned, and that the fake crown princes would be quietly appreciative of the efforts of Subaru and his friends. Beatrice, as expected of Betty's Subaru, I suppose. Beatrice looked at Tanza proudly while tightly holding Subaru's hand. For a moment, there was a tingle flowing between them again, but Subaru put it aside. Taking that into account, they faced the detached building's door. Subaru, does Rem or Flop-san have the keys to the entrance? Rem, no, I didn't know where the key was, so I thought I would pry it open by force. Flop, you can trust in wife-san's strength. As you already know, my arms are as meager as they look. With Louis attached to Rem at the hip, Flop showed off his feeble biceps. Subaru scratched his cheek at the two's replies, and pathetically turning to face Tanza, Subaru, would you be the master key/you once again? Tanza, I am not sure what a master key is, but I understand what you are trying to say. Schwartz-Summer, I would like to reiterate this to you. Subaru, Tanza isn't a tool for breaking open walls, right? Forgive me. Towards Subaru, who meekly bowed his head, Tanza released a deep, deep sigh. However, it was not just a sigh. With deep compassion Tanza softly spoke, please step aside, to request that Subaru and Rem move away from the front of the door, and she gripped the large padlock hanging from it with both of her hands. Then, with a sudden and strong jerk of Tanza's slender hands, the lock twisted off. It was quite the shocking sight, but Subaru and Idra had grown used to seeing it. At Tanza's unbelievable display of superhuman strength, Rem and Flop stared in wonder, and as Subaru saw those reactions to his side, he took a light breath and slowly opened the door to the solitary building. And then, Subaru, I think that everyone has their own respective circumstances, but, for the time being, why don't we put away our various grudges, and work together to get out of this place? Like that, being careful not to alarm the cautious inhabitants, Subaru entered the solitary building inside of which were lines of narrow jail cells, containing the fake crown princes which Subaru had greeted. Fake crown princes. At Subaru's call, the faces of 14 or 15 young boys turned towards him. As they had been called the black-haired crown princes, and counting backwards from the current age of the Emperor Vincent equals Abel, it was to be expected that they would be around the same age as Subaru was presently. That said, the sight of the figures of these children that had been hidden from the gaze of the public inside of these jail cells was sickening. Tanza, however, each of their cells are spacious, and it looks thoroughly cleaned, so it does not feel like such a poor environment. Peeking inside of the solitary building from the side, Tanza added her own opinion on top of Subaru's impressions. As she had said, the space was cleaner than just the bare minimum. It seemed that the fake crown princes were being properly fed, and any who were suffering extreme weakness could not be found. Tanza, more or less, it seems like they were prepared in case one of them was the true crown prince. Beatrice, perhaps they also do not have a taste for taking the trouble to torment children. In fact, Rem, given the temperament of the homeowner, it seems like it could be either. From Tanza to Beatrice, and then to Rem, each took over to share their impressions of the inside of the solitary building. At that description, Subaru thought that the owner of this large mansion most likely, they were an important figure in the imperial capital. Considering these circumstances, the fact that they had captured so many candidates for the black-haired crown prince like this also indicated a rebellious spirit towards the fake emperor, who understood there was no such thing as a fake crown prince. Subaru, that fact that his son is a fake, the man in question would know best. Wait a second? Is it possible that the fake emperor doesn't know? If Abel was the type of guy to be careless with his relationships with women, then, Rem, I can't say this for certain, but I can't imagine that being a side of Abel-san. Subaru, I agree. That guy, doesn't he consider his own cross-dressed self to be the most beautiful woman in the world? Looking back on the time that he had called himself Natsumi Schwartz, Abel as Bianca, and Flop as Flora, Subaru spoke of such reminiscences. At any rate, Subaru, I'm going to open the jail cells now. It's going to be pretty busy outside, with all of the rumbling and shaking, you know. Let's throw away our grudges, and all escape together. Fake Crown Prince, escape? But all of the cells are locked, from inside. Among the fake crown princes who came from different tribes and had different skin colors, someone said this in response, to which Subaru replied with an O. All of them had black hair and black eyes, which was not very common in this world, and so with their physical traits being similar to Subaru, while feeling a certain sense of kinship with them, Subaru, don't worry about the lock. We have a solution right here, Tanza, right here indeed. Subaru pointed his thumb towards Tanza, and the little girl bowed as she showed the broken lock in her hands to the fake crown princes. All of their faces looked surprised at this, their skeptical expressions disappearing. Instead, a sense of awe was directed towards Tanza, but, Subaru, it looks like getting you out won't be a problem. Tanza over here will break you out. Rem, why yes, Subaru, where's that friend you met here that you were talking about just now? Rem, if you mean Katya-san. With her hand placed on Louis's head, Rem's expression stiffened as she turned around towards the outside of the detached annex. Judging from Rem's reaction, this Katya was probably in the main building. They succeeded in crushing the 3 zombies in the vicinity of the selfsame annex, but others had likely gotten into the mansion. They had to find a way to somehow get the girl in question out before she was discovered. Subaru, does this Katya person have any distinguishing features? Rem, she has brown, curly hair and deep eyes. And then, Subaru, and then, Flop, Miss Katya has bad legs. Because of that, while wife-san and I headed here, we had her hide in the other building. Subaru, her legs are. Subaru put his hand on his chin in response to what Flop had answered in Rem's stead. Fortunately, since they had the Galewind horse Subaru and the others had rode in on, it could be said that this was the perfect situation for carrying someone with bad legs. Since their overall mobility would drop considerably anyway by taking the fake crown princes along, that would probably not be a problem. Subaru, I'm concerned that Tanza is our only decent fighter. Beatrice, they weigh Betty and Subaru are now. We would not be outdone that dear girl, I suppose. Idra, although I'm not on the same level as Whites or Gustav Dono, I can put up a fight, too. Subaru, concerned about their fighting strength, received reassuring answers from Beatrice and Idra. Of course, they could not be overly reliant on Idra since they needed him to hold the Galewind horse's reins, but Subaru's skill was to make full use of the cards in his hand to optimally adapt to the situation at hand. Subaru, if I assume the role of a fake crown prince, and at least one person could ride on the horse. Rem, I'm worried about Katya-san, so if it's possible. Subaru, my bad, that's right. Looking impatient, Rem appealed to Subaru, who was trying to rack his brain. Subaru nodded back as he felt the need to quickly clear away the cause of her worries. For the time being, as long as Subaru and Beatrice were there, they could deal with the zombies. Subaru, just in case, Tanza should come along too. In order to reassure this Katya person, if Rem or Flop-san could also come, then, Subaru was just about to say that they could get by without causing any unnecessary commotion. ? You don't need to worry about that. I already got Katya out safely. Subaru, like that. Subaru's words were cut off by a voice from outside the detached annex. No, merely being interrupted was not why his words were cut off. It was because Subaru's heart was pierced by something cold in that voice he had heard. Beatrice, Subaru, since held Beatrice's hand, she noticed something was wrong as his whole body instinctively grew tense, but without responding to Beatrice's words, Subaru quickly headed to the entrance of the detached annex before Rem and Flop, who were already standing there, even had a chance to turn around, to confirm who it was. And then, to keep them away from Rem, The one who was standing there and had called out was, ? I really have to say, this is some peculiar coincidence. How else could we end up in this situation, Subaru? ? We probably all have our own respective circumstances, but for the time being, why don't we put aside our troublesome grudges and work together to get out of here? Thus, the man repeated Subaru's statement from just before, as if to ridicule it, and shrugged his shoulders. And so, the adversary with whom Subaru grew the most troublesome and fateful bond during his stay in the Empire, Todd Fang,